Good evening, everybody. That's a change, isn't it? An evening recording. Today's prompt for the Pebble a Day is from the trash, or raid the trash. And I really love sometimes just to be able to get out of my own creative head and go and find and discover some materials that would otherwise be thrown away and see what I can do with them. And so you can see me here ploughing through what I managed to find from my trash. And I'm going to just do something very simple. It's not very complicated. I'm going to glue bits and pieces of rubbish together. And I've left the whole video in. I didn't edit it out because I wanted to just give you a few top tips. So the first one is when you are peeling the layers back of corrugated cardboard, using a knitting needle to just, you saw me doing it at the beginning, slide underneath one layer and use it as a sort of lever to go between the layers is really useful because you get a really good peeling off. This is from an onion wrapper. We store our onions here in the UK. You can buy them in supermarkets in plastic, corrugated plastic. So I'm going to put that down. When you are gluing fine sort of plastic like that, it often won't stick on its own. And so using a little bit of tissue, just a single ply, you don't want too much and you don't want it too thick, just on top of it, and then putting your gel matte medium on top just helps it stay put. I then use a bit of paper. That's pretty easy to get it to stick, but because I'm sticking it on top of the corrugated cardboard and I don't want to lose that corrugated pattern, that corrugated texture, you're going to see me go over it with my finger and just smooth down the paper into the crevices. And just to say, what I'm playing with today really is using the trash to create a sort of masterboard that I can then cut my stone from. But I'm also playing with contrast and texture. So less making something pretty and beautiful, whatever those words mean, and more creating something interesting with several layers. So once I've built up my texture, my final layer is a single ply of kitchen roll, and I glue all over it, and then I dip my fingers into water and gently go over everything. I have sped this up a little bit, so I'm not normally attacking it so viciously, but I'm just using water just to go over the glued paper. I end up putting another little bit of that corrugated paper that's in between the layers of the Amazon envelope. And again, because it's quite fine and I really want it to glue down, I'm going over the top with a layer of tissue paper and then using water on my fingers to just smooth it down. That means that paper is going to get in between all of those grooves, which is what I really want. So, a few words of wisdom from somebody that's done lots of stuff like this. Don't try and predict the outcome. It won't work. Dry it solidly. You need to put it on a radiator or out in the sunshine to dry, and use gel matte medium really to glue layers, because that's the only thing that's really water solvent and will repel, will be okay for painting on top of. You're not going to let it disintegrate. So here's the dried surface, all sorts of layers. And I'm going to use some gesso just to give me a white background onto which to add some colour. So I add my gesso down, and then you're going to see me flick some paint on top of that, some water, sorry, with a paintbrush. And then I'm going to use a piece of tissue to pat that off. You might think, why are you putting it on to then take it off again? Well, because what I want is a sort of distressed surface. What's really fun to do when you're playing with different textures is, and certainly if you ever wanted to do something like this on a canvas, is that you want to have a pale unified surface, but you don't want to have a matte finish. You're wanting to create interest and texture. So you can see me here just patting off some of that gesso, removing some of it. The texture is still all there, and now I've got this kind of grungy white in the background that I can add some colour to. So I've got a yellow ochre that I water down to start off with to make it really fluid, and I put a little wash of that over the area, again using my tissue to, I put the colour down and then I use the tissue to bring it back off again. And then I use exactly the same colour, but I do some dry painting. So that means I'm really making sure my paintbrush is dry. I'm not adding any water to the paint. And I'm just using it again to give a different quality of the paint. So this particular layer of paint, which I will dry off, that's quite washy and watery. And then using the dry paint just gives another quality to it. Always drying off in between the layers. And then once I finish with those paints, I start to use some pastels. I cut out my, I use some pastels on it first, and then I cut out the shape and use different coloured pastels to pick out different areas. So the only thing that you need to know if you've never done it before, if you're using oil pastels on top of a textured surface, it's yummy. Because the pastels don't, unlike the paint, which will easily soak into all the grooves and all the crevices, the oil pastels like to sit on the top unless you really rub them in. And so you can highlight all of those different textures just by using an oil pastel, and it's really yummy. Now, I'm not going to say that you end up today, if you choose to use my technique, you're not going to end up with some really beautiful, subtle stone pebble like we did at the beginning. This isn't a technique that's going to give you something traditionally pretty. But what you are going to end up with is something really interesting, something that has got a lot of texture, a lot of dimension, and in my opinion looks like one of those rubble-clad stones that you often find on beaches that perhaps are next to cliff faces. So that's my day for raiding stuff from the trash. Perhaps you'll get something and do some printmaking with it. I don't know. Let's see what you get up to, and I'll see you tomorrow.